It's our privilege to be here tonight. This is our 11th marriage conference. We do one every year. This is the 11th one. And I don't think there's ever been one where Dana and I have spoke, other than to introduce the guests. But we're going to talk tonight. So what do I want to say? When we do these marriage conferences, we always pray about it and who's going to come in. But I want to tell you this, that our vision is this, that we're creating an atmosphere, a time where God can speak to each one of you. So, whatever anybody's speaking, it's all going to be good. But what God tells you, that's what's really good. So just, have your expector out there that he's going to be fresh to each one of you and tell you just things that are going to, that's it. So we're not here tonight because we've done everything right, okay? But, we just want to share some things that God's put on our heart. And, Dana, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm the one in the room that is being stretched. Not just, speaking, but also the topic. Just makes me a little uncomfortable. And it's funny because growing up, my parents were pretty progressive for the time. I was born in 1962, so you can do the math. But, they were pretty open about their relationship. They hugged and kissed and chased each other around the house. And when I was old enough, I think I was like maybe 10 or 11. My mom bought this special book, and it was called Almost 12. And it talked about sex and all the different parts of the body and all of that, And so, that was pretty progressive. And my mother always implanted in my brain the fact that sex was a gift from God within marriage. And so I had a lot of different experiences before I got born again and married Paul. And but I think it was really just her pounding that into my head, and that example that allowed me to have a really healthy sex life with Paul. And we still have a sexy sex life. And, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is just sex through the changes and through some different seasons, because it does change. And I'm going a little bit where I didn't think I was going to go, but when we were first married, I'll tell you more about that too, but we literally, this isn't, bragging, and it's not, I guess, an exaggeration, but when we were first married for years and years and years, we had sex every day. And that was just kind of astounding if people heard that, But then we grew older, and right about the time we grew older, I was in my late 30s and he was in his early 40s when we started this church. And so it was a very stressful time, moving and just, we were out on the water walking, and things started to wane. And he was working and we were working, and it was just like this really intense time. And we both were a little concerned, like, is something wrong or whatever, but now looking back, and even God in the midst of it all, there wasn't anything wrong. We were just in a different, we were in a different season. And so anyway, he's hoping that it goes back to how it was when we were first married. He's just like, And I'm open to that, but, there's just, we're just, you don't want to be where you're not, and you don't want to compare to any other part of life either. But anyway, so back to, so that was how I was raised. And then Paul's folks were really tight-lipped on the subject. He never heard one peep. He never saw anything until his sex ed class in whatever grade.
It was more at recess.
More at recess, he says. It was in school. He heard things in school. And so we're going to talk about, like I say, just sex through the different changes and seasons of life as you grow older. And also, we also want to talk just a little bit about talking to your kids about sex, too, and what we did and the books we used and stuff like that. So,
I'm it. See, we don't usually teach together. I kind of like it. It's kind of cool.
We worked out a system.
Yeah, we touch each other. She may just get me so wound up that I might just have to touch her anyway. I don't know. When we do premarital counseling here at the church, something I make a point to tell every couple is that sex is from God. It's a gift from God. And there's nothing dirty about it. It's His idea. And I purposely do that because, someone needs to talk about it. And the church hasn't always done a good job of doing that. And, I've read some things, and sometimes I can get so naive. I'm so sheltered because I don't know what other churches always do. But sometimes I hear things and I go, whoa, really? They say that? I heard, one person told me in the last year that when they got married that it was against the rules to kiss in church. Like when they got married, and you know what I mean? There's that point in the service where you say, you may now kiss your bride. They didn't do that because the idea was that it was a holy place. But you see, and I said, well, what did you do? Just go with it here. Yeah. Anyway, I said, so what did you do? He said, well, we kissed anyway. I said, how'd that go? He said, well, the family doesn't talk about it still. And in my mind is just getting blown. I'm like, what? People think like that, but people do, and people come from all different backgrounds, and I'm not advocating that we make out, in the pew or anything like that. But, kissing your wife is not something, you can't do in a holy place. I mean, like Pastor Stephen talked, which was really a great session. God's in on this stuff. And people come from all different places, and I'll just say this. I'll just wing it. Who knows if we'll use these notes, but people come from all different areas, and something Dana said and Pastor Stephen said too, don't ever compare your sex life with what other people have. Don't ever compare it with what Hollywood puts out there, okay? And if you're having any kind of issue in your sex life, know this, that there's hope, there's help. God will get in there and help you through any of this stuff. And what I'd say too is be open to talk to your mate if there is any issue. It's an embarrassing thing when there's an issue. But when the two of you can get together on something, I'm telling you, there's nothing that can stand in your way. I always feel like that. If Dana's by my side and God's with us, I figure we can do anything. And when it comes to sex and sexual issues, it's totally the truth. It's totally the truth. There's hope for you. I remember before we got married, we had a very brief time that we were engaged. And, as a pastor, I've always kind of encouraged people not to wait too long when you know you're going to marry someone to marry them, because there's a superpower that's trying to pull you guys together, and it's very difficult to not, we just had the mindset that we didn't want to have sex until we got married. And in my mind, I had even thoughts like, we'd miss the blessing or something like that. Can I tell you something? If you had sex before you got married, God will still bless you. There might be some mental hoops that you need to go through in your mind and everything, but I'm telling you what, God will bless you. Were it not for the grace of God, we would have not made it the 2 weeks that we were together while we were engaged, because I lived in Haiti when we got engaged, and we were only together for a couple weeks. And even then, it was like we had to plan things out so we weren't alone at the wrong time, and We even actually, we were making out in the car one time, and the police came and stopped us. And
It's in December. It's all fogged up.
yeah, we didn't have anywhere to go, or we didn't have. Anyway, I lived in Haiti, and Kara, this may be the first time you're hearing some of these things. I don't know.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
All right. Let me read this. Pastor Stephen read it. I'm going to read it to you. Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh." The King James, gives it that leave it and cleave it. You've heard that, leave and cleave. That word cleave they use here is joined, and it means have sex, okay? That brought a whole new revelation to me when I heard the word cleave meant sex. I'm like, really? Wow. But anyway, it does, and sex is God's idea. Marriage, sex, this whole idea was instituted before the fall, before man ever fell. And it just tells me this, that it's God's plan for a man and a woman, okay? It's God's plan for man and woman that they'd find that person and they'd unite, have marriage, and have sex. It's His plan. It's His idea. I'm going to go to the same scripture that Stephen did in Proverbs 5. And again, he said this. I won't spend a long time on this, but he said this. He says, drink water from your own cistern and running water from your own well. Your wife is the one, men, that you have sex with, okay? She's the one that fills your mind. She's the one that you're attracted. She's the one you chase. I'll read the whole thing, and I'm going to stop on the last verse. It says, should your fountains be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the street, let them be only your own, and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of your youth. As a loving deer and a graceful doe, let her breasts satisfy you at all times, and always be enraptured with her love. I looked up the word enraptured, and you want to know what it means? It means to swerve, meander, reel, roll, to be intoxicated, to be drunk. So that's what the word says to husbands to be about your wives. Guys think about sex. Well, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're thinking about your wife. Okay? She's the one. She's the one. She's God's plan for you. In Hebrews it says this, that marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled. Marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled. I watched this video on YouTube. Hang with me here. I know we're talking about sex, and I watched a video on YouTube. And it was an interview with this quarterback named Roger Staubach. This was back in probably the late 60s. I know because I remember the era with Joe Namath. There's two quarterbacks, Joe Namath, Roger Staubach. Anybody remember them? Joe Namath was the quarterback for the New York Jets, and they called him Broadway Joe. He was what you'd call a playboy, okay? Roger Staubach, is it Bach or Bach? Well, anyway, Roger, he was quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. And he was quite the opposite of Joe Namath. He was like a godly man, okay? He was like what you'd probably call all-American, okay? And here's Joe. He was the one that had the big Fu Manchu mustache, and, he was running around all the time. And anyway, the interview I saw was Roger Staubach, and this is what he said. He said, you know what? He said, I have sex just as much as Joe Namath, except I have it with the same woman. Isn't that something? He had sex just as much as Joe Namath. I mean, if you were around in the late 60s, that meant something. What? But he had it with the same woman. So be intoxicated with your wife. So sex is a journey. It's a discovery over a lifetime. It's something to learn to laugh with each other. Can you do that? Yeah, you can laugh with each other. You need to grow in understanding of each other and talk about challenges when they come, okay? I remember when Dana and I got married, we got a book that really was a help to us. And I'm all about, telling you to read books, Don't stay where you're at. Learn, grow, increase in your knowledge. But the book we got was called Intended for Pleasure. And it was a great book, and we read it in the early part of our marriage. But it's a book I kept because there were things that you could go back to and read about at different stages of your life. You think you have it all figured out when you first get married, at least after a little bit. But I'm telling you what, life is a journey, and sex is a journey, okay? And it's something, I always want to have this attitude, is that it can get better. Do you hear me? It can get better. As good as it is, as good as it's been, it can get better. So anyway, talking to each other. This is just little tidbits of advice, okay? These are things I would tell a couple coming to get married. The advantage you got tonight, though, is you got her here too, okay? Take time, get away, have honeymoons. What that means is get away without your kids. As life goes on, you have kids, married people, have times where you get away without your kids. Don't feel guilty about it either. Leave the kids at home, get a babysitter. This doesn't have to be a grand, expensive thing, but you need to put into your marriage. You need to put into your marriage. It's healthy to do that. If you're like us, kids, at a certain age, they're like, oh, we don't get to go with? Let me handle this, Dana. No. And here's another one. Pastor Stephen had "Do Not Disturb" up here. I used to actually have those signs. I did. Yeah, I took them from a hotel. But anyway, I want to tell you this, that if you're married and you have kids, you need to have a lock on your bedroom door, okay? There needs to be a lock on it. And husbands, this is for your good. Put it on there because it'll give your wife peace of mind. It's hard to go there if you're thinking about someone coming through that door unexpectedly. Your bedroom really, we call this conference Oasis, but your bedroom should be an oasis. It should be a protected area. Now, can I meddle? This isn't, I don't have a Bible verse for this. But we protected our bedroom, all our years of the kids growing up. We weren't big fans of, the kids are up in the night, well, you can come to bed with us. Now, if you do that, God bless you, that's fine. I'm just telling you what we did. We'd get up in the night, we'd take care of them and made sure they went to their own bed because our bed was our bed. And we protected that. That was our oasis. As a matter of fact, we're in this, would we call it a 5-year project?
Well, it's supposed to be 3, but...
Okay.
I got a mic, yeah. It's supposed to be, I have like a 3-year plan to do some remodeling to our home, but judging by how the first little project went, it's probably more like a 5-year plan. So anyway, but you know what really sets me free? I watch HGTV, and even the professionals run into snags.
That's right.
Before I knew about HGTV, or before, I would get so frustrated trying to do anything because I just thought it was me. And life is like that too. It's not just you. We all deal with it, even the professionals.
So here's what I'm going to say. We got a 5-year plan of remodeling our house. The first thing we did our bedroom. Woo! That's right. Woo! That's what I'm saying. We wanted that to be like a place we go to that's just refreshing, that is an oasis, okay? So, did I say this? Sex is a priority. It's a priority. If you're not finding time to have sex with your wife and husband and wife, all that stuff, then you need to change your priorities, okay? I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I don't want to take what Dana's going to share either. Let me read these other bullet points. Sex begins upstairs in your mind, okay? That's probably not a news to anybody, but here's what I'll say with that. If you think you're too old for sex, then you probably are. Okay? Truthfully, you know, I this is probably out of line of where my notes are anyway, but I took this survey off of a book by, I think it's Tim LaHaye, is it? Anyway, we have it up here. We'll leave it up here too. And it's called Sex After 40. And it was surveys. You guys like to read surveys? Well, this survey, you know, I'm not going to read every detail of it, but it was listing age brackets like 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70 and over. And even in the 70 and over, there was a good percentage, like 19, that were having sex at least once a week. That's in the 70 or over. Dane and I were at a marriage conference once back in the early 90s. It was Kenneth Hagin and Aretha Hagin. Actually, it was just Kenneth Hagin speaking. Aretha was just getting embarrassed in the front row. But at the time, Brother Hagin, who it's what we called him, was in his 70s. And he looked out at us and said, you know, you guys think I'm too old for sex? He says, I'll have you know this. We're ahead of the national average. That's what he said. So, yeah, we're talking about sex. All right. Avoid comparisons. Your marriage, your sex life is unique. Just know this, God's in on it, and it can get better, okay? Your physical relationships might change over time, but honestly, they can get better, okay? So it's a myth that couples lose their ability to have sex at some age. That's a myth, okay? Don't think that way. Don't allow yourself to think that way. Don't think, oh, it's going to be over. I've heard people say those things. That's not true. The quantity may decrease, maybe, I don't know. But the quality certainly doesn't, okay? All right. All right. Take it away, kid.
All right. Well, sex is not just the icing on the cake. It is the vital ingredient of the cake in your marriage. We all had great cake tonight, so I thought I'd say that. But, and the other thing I want to say is never use sex or withhold sex as a weapon with each other. But actually, it is a weapon. Not to be used against each other, but against temptation. And I know Stephen read 1 Corinthians 7, 4 and 5. It's funny because he was downloading notes and scriptures today, and he said to us, your notes look just like my notes. I said, oh, it'll come out different. But it's funny how he led us along the same line of thought. But mine is, I think in the King James Version, it's a little shorter of that 1 Corinthians 7, 4 and 5. It says, the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to prayer and fasting, and then come together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So it is a weapon in the spirit for you as a married couple to have sex. Now, I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me in our early year of marriage. It was before I was even pregnant with Kara. And before we got married, I had gone through 2, what I would call, not my will be done experiences. The first one was when I was first saved. I had been dating this person on and off through high school and into college, and it wasn't a good, healthy relationship. I'm not here to talk about that, but what I do want to say is one night when I was first saved, I was back at home from college, and I just thought, okay, I'm gonna get this person born again. So I shared the gospel with him, and he started reading through the prayer to pray and ask Jesus into your heart, and he got about halfway through, and he said, Dana, I can't do this. And I said, what do you mean you can't do this? It's the devil, you can't do this. I was just like on fire for God, and he was like, no, seriously, I feel sick to my stomach. I can't do this. And so anyway, that happened, and I was so frustrated. I couldn't talk him into it. He left that night, and we never really said anything. I mean, he just kind of left, and I went upstairs to go to bed, and the Lord told me, he said, it's him or it's me. And I was like, well, I want to choose you. But we had this relationship where I knew the relationship wasn't good for me, and I had tried to break up before, but I always would end up going back, or he would always end up going back. It was just not a healthy thing. And I said, okay, I will never call him again, but you got to help. You got to help me. And it was really a supernatural thing, because we never did talk. He left that night, and I haven't talked to him since, and he's not talked to me. We've never seen each other. Whatever, he's gone. So I went and I read my Bible, and in the Bible I found a scripture, and I don't have this one, Stephen, but it basically just said, if you leave your mother and your father for me, I'll give you, I forget how it goes, but anyway, but basically what I knew in my heart was I had given that up for God, and so then God was going to pick my husband. So that was the one experience. The second experience happened shortly before we got engaged. I very clearly heard the Holy Spirit tell me over and over and over, ask me a question. He said, would you be willing to remain single for the rest of your life if that was my will for you? And I wasn't open to that at all. I was like, no, obviously not. No, I don't want to be single. And it just kept going over and over and over. So finally, after about 6 months, what he asked me is, he said, well, what is it that you want out of a marriage that I can't give you? And I was like, well, I want a diamond ring. And there's a long story with the diamond ring, too. I won't go there either for lack of time. But anyway, he said, I can give you that. I can give you that. I can give you that. And I said, okay. And when I said okay, I really believed that that's what he wanted me to do. And then less than 6 months later, I was engaged to Paul. So he just wanted, he wasn't asking me to do that, but he was wanting me to be willing to do that. He wanted to be first place in my life. So anyway, I find my knight in shining armor. I mean, we are just like made for each other. We have the most enviable marriage. We always have. It's not hard work. I mean, he's just as fun to live with as he is to have as a pastor. I mean, I have a lot of rough edges, and he just loves me anyway. It's just ridiculous, So I say all that to tell you what happened to me early. Remember, I said I was going to tell you something that happened to me early in our marriage, before we had kids. I went to sleep, and I had a dream. And in my dream, it was so real. We were caretakers at an apartment at that time. And in the dream, this girl that worked in the office, who was just cute as a button, so darling, everything I wasn't. And she had a good relationship with Paul and I, because, we were good workers and everything. And in my dream, Paul and her were together, and they were laughing, and they were in the apartment area, and they rode off on a motorcycle together. I hate motorcycles. I don't want to be on a motorcycle. You know what I mean? So that happened, and I woke up, and when I woke up, it was like it happened. It was like he had an affair with this little office girl. And the Lord spoke really strongly to my heart. He said, don't think it can't happen to you. And I was just blown away. And I was like, whoa. But he said, don't think it can't happen to you. And I don't know what changes I made, but Paul tells me he remembers there was some changes. I don't remember what it was.
What I would say is life got even better.
Because I was like, whoa. You know, that's what people are talking about when they say, you know, a good marriage takes effort. You can't take each other for granted. You can't take their love for granted. You can't take their, you know, just nothing. You cannot take it for granted. And that's what I mean when I say having sex with your spouse is a weapon against temptation. Because if you're having awesome sex between the two of you, why are you don't look. You don't. So, wait, let's see if I got any more to say. See, we're so different. I got old-fashioned paper notes, and he's got his iPad. So, oh yeah, I just wanted to mention this. You know how, and that's one of the books we have here too, the love languages. That's usually brought up about at every marriage retreat that you go to, the love languages, because everybody gives and receives love differently. And if you don't know what your love language is, and you don't know what your spouse's love language is, you really need to get this book and read it, because it's very helpful. What you don't want to do is allow someone else to fill their tank. You want to be the one filling your spouse's tank. So if they are words of affirmation, you learn to say nice words. If they are gifts, you blow the budget and you buy a gift. Seriously, whatever it takes, you know, because you don't want, you know, someone else filling their tank. You don't want these things. And it starts in the unseen realm. It starts without a thought taking captive. At the last women's retreat, women's conference that we just had a couple weeks ago, the Sandy Borgmeyer said something that I just really went off on me, and she said it twice. She said, Keith Moore quote, "Love cools off a little at a time." And I was just thinking about that, how you want to keep it hot in your marriage and between each other. A marriage should be moving in the direction of we're more in love today than we were the day we got married. This is so anti the way the world thinks about it and talks about it too, but it is possible. It is possible to grow in love, and like he says, the best is yet to come. So if it's little foxes that spoil the vine, this is Song of Solomon 2:15. If little foxes can spoil the vine of a marriage or of anything, then guess what? Little choices in the right direction. So there's hope no matter where you're at. Let's say you are here tonight and you say, we're really blown it. You know, I don't know their love language, and someone else has been filling their tank and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Just one little thing in the right direction, and guess what? You're headed in the right direction again. So I know a ministry couple very, very closely. Our kids grew up together and all this stuff, and their marriage ended in divorce after their kids were grown up. And it looked just like, huh? You ever see those? Where a marriage is just, huh? What? And it just, and especially in ministry, this kind of stuff happens too, you know. And I did that too. I was just like, what? And we knew these people very, very, very well. And then I remembered one little thing, talking about those little foxes that can just spoil something. One time when we were at a women's retreat, the wife and I, she confided in me that she had better sex before her marriage and before Christ than with her husband. And I was totally shocked because right away we invited God into our life and into our marriage and into our sex life. And I mean, there is nothing like anointed sex. And you can have anointed sex because God ordained it. It's from Him. There, you know how there's like there's a song and then there's an anointed song? Whoa. And that's how it was for us, just God anointed it, and He anoints our relationship. So I was shocked, and but I was thinking about it. I was thinking about this marriage on the surface that just looked like everything was fine, but that one little thought must have grew over time. And instead of nipping it in the bud, they ended in a divorce. Praise God. So, go ahead.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, I guess just say this, that there's hope. No matter where your marriage is at, if it's been rocky, sex life, be willing to talk with each other and talk with God. And it can be awkward. Maybe it's just me, but it could be awkward to talk about sex. Something you might do is get a good book. And I know there'll be some recommended here this weekend. Maybe that's something you do, just read the book together and let it be an opportunity to open up dialogue and discussion. But and maybe your marriage is hot and everything like that. Well, you want to go further, there's another thing. Just talk about it. Maybe read a book there. It doesn't have to be in crisis to do this kind of stuff, but there's hope. There's hope. I just want to take a minute before we're getting close to the end, and I want to have Ruth come up at the end too. I know when our kids were at a certain age, we started talking, Dana and I, about that we need to bring talks to them about sex. And, the best thing, is not to learn about sex on the playground or at recess or even in the school system. In fact, Dana told me that she knows somebody that's in the school system, and she said that the sex ed teacher came in the break room one day and was talking and said when they open up the topic of sex in the classroom, they say the P word about 6-7 times, just so everybody will stop giggling, and then they go on. And I know the schools teach on it, but really, the best place would be for your parents, as parents to teach your kids. And so, our goal as parents wasn't to, teach our kids technique or anything like that, but our goal is to give them some teaching to learn the basics and learn that it isn't something to be ashamed of, and it can be talked about. It's something that you can discuss. Okay, so we got a series of books. The first one was I think 3 to 5. And every couple years we introduced a new book. It's 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 8 to 11, and then it got into the teen years and then got really pretty explicit, explaining things. But, that was just a way that we could talk with our kids. And
so, this first book, is called Why Boys and Girls Are Different, ages 3 to 5. And, I was going to be the good mom. I was home with my kids when they were that age, and he was working, and so I opened it up and I said, okay, we're going to read a book now, girls, and I started, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was biting the insides of my cheeks, and I was laughing, and I was just I couldn't do it. I could not do it. And so, of course, he could do it, So that's how far I've come with it. You can ask my girls. I mean, they never read one of these books with me because I'd be in the other room laughing about the P word. I couldn't say it. I could not. I won't say it right now either. I'm sure somebody will say it this weekend, but you won't hear me say it. I'm really being stretched. But anyway, so.
All right, so, we just went through these books, and I don't know, these books are still on Amazon, but there's other books too. I know that I guess what I'd say is this: let it be a discussion in your home, Have time that you take and spend with your kids and just let them hear it from you, It doesn't have to be awkward. We always had Dana in there at the beginning of every family talk like that, but sometimes she'd have to leave the room, but that's okay. We continued on, and I'm sure she was praying in the next room, or laughing in the Holy Ghost or something. But so anyway, just giving kids, a basic understanding, and more than anything, letting them know that this isn't bad stuff. This isn't stuff to be ashamed about. This is something that God put in our life to enjoy.